I anticipated nothing out of the ordinary from my day. Truthfully, it felt indistinguishable from any other. The monotony was palpable, waking up, managing my antique shop, and finding ways to occupy the remaining hours. Life had been solitary for several years, not in an overtly sorrowful way, but with a quiet loneliness that catches you off guard. As I picked up my regular groceries, my actions were mechanical, my mind elsewhere. The aisles, filled with cereal and discounted cleaning products, failed to capture my interest. I was barely present. My existence was adequate, though devoid of companionship. I wasn't unhappy, just solitary. Since Dan's departure 7 years ago, life had felt as though he had simply disappeared. Divorce, they call it, but for me, he was just gone. At one moment we were a team, and then suddenly we weren't. Time marched on as it tends to do, and I moved along with it. I wasn't a young woman anymore. At 57, society viewed me as someone settled in her ways, expected to accept life's current path. But then, there was Hunter. I hadn't known his name then. To me, he was merely the cashier, the one ringing up my groceries, yet he was impossible to overlook. Unlike any cashier I'd encountered before, he stood tall, likely over 6 feet, with lean muscles that fit his uniform perfectly. His hair, a curly, artfully tousled mess as if he'd just risen from bed, framed a face that could have been crafted by a master sculptor. His jawline was striking, his green eyes penetrating, and that smile. That smile did something to me. "Ma'am, are you okay?" His voice, deep and smooth, broke the spell I hadn't realized I was under. I blinked, aware that I'd been staring for far too long. My face grew warm. "Oh, sorry," I mumbled, shifting my focus to the cereal in my cart as if it held the secrets of the universe. He chuckled softly, continuing to scan my items. "No worries. Happens all the time." I glanced at him through lowered lashes, my heart pounding. I wasn't a timid woman, yet something about him made me feel youthful again. My skin flushed and my pulse raced as I dared another look. He was breathtaking. That vibrant energy, that charm, it radiated from him. And here I was, a middle-aged woman with graying hair, experiencing feelings I thought long dormant. As he finished bagging my groceries, my fingers trembled over my wallet. I couldn't help but imagine him, his hands, his form, his touch. A surge of warmth coursed through me, leaving me both embarrassed and exhilarated. It had been years since I had truly been with a man. My mind was a flurry of thoughts I couldn't voice. I handed him a tip along with my payment. I don't usually tip cashiers, but this time felt different, like I needed to offer him something, even if it was just a few extra dollars. "Thanks," he said with a smile, his gaze lingering on mine a moment too long. My stomach fluttered, warmth spreading in places I thought had grown cold. I swallowed hard, muttering a response before gathering my bags and hurrying away. The evening breeze greeted me as I exited the store, but it did little to quell the fire lit within me. Hunter occupied my thoughts entirely. Settling into my car, I gripped the steering wheel firmly. "Get a hold of yourself, Danielle," I murmured. Yet the more I tried to dismiss the thoughts, the more vividly they persisted. His image, his physique, his voice, they haunted me. By the time I reached home, I was a bundle of nerves. I attempted to distract myself with television, but my mind inevitably drifted back to him. Each glance, every grin, and the way his hands moved as he scanned my groceries consumed my thoughts. Suddenly, I wasn't just a 57-year-old widow anymore, I was a vibrant woman once more. A woman with long-buried needs and desires, ones I had nearly forgotten existed. I didn't understand what had come over me. Before I realized it, I was upstairs in my bedroom, my groceries abandoned on the kitchen counter. Lying on my bed, staring at the ceiling, my imagination conjured Hunter beside me. I knew what I longed for. It had been ages since I'd permitted myself such indulgence, but tonight, I disregarded any reservations. I propped a pillow behind my head, letting my hands wander, envisioning them as his. I thought of Hunter, those piercing green eyes, lean arms, and the fluid way he moved behind the register. As my fingers traced paths, I whispered his name softly. What was I doing? This wasn't typical of me. I was a mature woman, not some adolescent. But the more I attempted to convince myself of the wrongness, the more I yearned. I yearned for him. That night, sleep eluded me. Each time I closed my eyes, his face appeared, his voice resonated, his touch lingered. It was maddening. Normally, my grocery runs were bi-monthly, no need for more frequent visits. Yet suddenly, I found excuses. I needed eggs, or perhaps fresh fruit, a new coffee blend, or detergent. Anything to return me to that register. Days blurred together, and each trip to the store became the highlight of my week. It was absurd, this infatuation with a man half my age, but I dismissed the absurdity. Hunter made me feel vibrant. Just seeing him, conversing with him, sharing fleeting smiles, it all revived something within me that I hadn't felt for years. Then, one day, everything shifted. It was late afternoon, concluding another uneventful day at the antique shop. I had resolved not to visit the store that day, as I truly needed nothing. But by 4 p.m., restlessness overcame me, and before long, I found myself driving there. As I walked through the sliding doors, my heartbeat quickened upon spotting him at the far register. The store was nearly deserted, only a few customers scattered around. As I wandered the aisles, picking up random items to justify my presence, I couldn't resist glancing his way. Hunter looked particularly striking that evening. His curls appeared slightly tousled, as if he'd run his fingers through them, and his lean frame moved with that characteristic grace. His t-shirt fit snugly, accentuating the definition of his chest and arms. Reaching the checkout, the store had emptied out. I placed my items on the belt, bananas, chips, and another bottle of wine, trying to appear nonchalant as he scanned them. But each time his hands touched the items, that familiar warmth surged through me. As he handed me the receipt, I noticed him glance at the clock behind the register. He closed the drawer with a decisive thud and sighed softly. "You're my last customer," he said with a warm smile, his voice familiar. "Finally get to head out," I nodded, my heart thrumming with an unfamiliar anticipation. Something stirred within me, a daring thought forming before I fully grasped it. As Hunter gathered his belongings and headed toward the exit, I followed, feigning interest in my purse. This was my moment. Outside, the sky had darkened, street lights flickering on as Hunter moved toward the parking lot, keys jangling in his hand. I trailed at a distance, scanning the cars until I recognized mine. Without a second thought, I leaned over the hood and pretended to inspect the engine, making sure my voice carried just enough as I muttered, "Damn thing won't start." Hunter was only a few feet away, and as I hoped, he turned his head, curious and concerned. "Everything all right, ma'am?" he called out, genuine worry in his tone. I turned towards him, putting on a show of frustration. "It's my car," I sighed. "Been acting up all week, and now it refuses to start." I crossed my arms, huffing in exaggerated annoyance. Hunter tilted his head, his brows furrowing. "Mind if I take a look?" he offered. "Yes, please. I'd appreciate that." His presence was almost overwhelming as he approached, even in the vastness of the parking lot. I stepped aside, watching as he leaned over the engine, his curls falling over his forehead while he examined the mess of wires and pipes. I couldn't help but admire the way his muscles shifted beneath his t-shirt. After a moment, he straightened up, wiping his hands on his jeans. "I know a guy who can tow it and get it fixed." "No worries," he reassured me. I exhaled a breath I didn't realize I was holding, feeling relieved. "Thank you, Hunter. I really didn't know what I was going to do." His smile seemed to brighten the world around me. "I can give you a ride home if you'd like." "I'm parked right over there," I suggested before I could stop myself. "That would be wonderful," he replied. He led me to his car, a sleek black sedan with leather seats, and courteously opened the passenger door for me. I slid in, the rich scent of leather mingling with the faint aroma of his cologne enveloping me. It was intoxicating. As we drove, we engaged in light conversation, discussing the weather, his job, and my antique shop. Yet my mind wandered, filled with ideas, possibilities, and long-buried desires. When we reached my driveway, I turned to him, my heart pounding. "Would you like to come in for a drink?" I asked, striving to keep my tone casual despite the whirlwind of emotions inside me. Hunter hesitated for a moment, his hands still resting on the steering wheel. Then he flashed that easy smile again, the one that made my knees feel weak. "Sure, why not?" We entered my home, and I gestured toward the living room. "Make yourself comfortable. I'll grab us some beers," I offered. He sank into the couch, his gaze taking in the surroundings with mild curiosity while I made my way to the kitchen. My hands trembled slightly with excitement as I retrieved 2 beers from the fridge. As I handed him a cold bottle, I smiled, saying, "Hope you like lagers." "Perfect," he said, effortlessly popping the cap off. He leaned back into the cushions, sipping his beer, and I seized the moment to admire him. He looked so at ease, so relaxed. But I wanted more. I wanted his attention on me, not just in a friendly manner, but in the way I'd envisioned every night since our first meeting. Excusing myself, I slipped away into my room, the beer still cool in my hand. In the dim light, I stood before the mirror, contemplating my next move. I removed my clothes and reached for a silk robe, the kind that flattered my figure and left just enough to the imagination. It wasn't precisely modest, but then again, modesty wasn't my goal tonight. I let the fabric drape over my shoulders, tying the sash loosely so it fell open just enough to hint at what lay beneath. When I returned to the living room, Hunter was still nursing his beer, his eyes on the television. I sauntered in casually, pretending not to notice him at first. "Where's that remote?" I murmured, bending slowly to search beneath the table. The robe slipped slightly as I rummaged through the items. Out of the corner of my eye, I noticed Hunter glance my way, just a quick flicker, a brief shift in his gaze, but it was enough to make my heart race. I straightened up, remote in hand, and flashed him a playful smile. "Got it." He cleared his throat, adjusting himself slightly on the couch. "Nice place you've got," he commented, his eyes taking in the surroundings. "Thank you," I replied, settling in beside him, ensuring our legs brushed ever so slightly. "So," I began with a playful tone, "do you always go out of your way to help older women with their cars?" Hunter chuckled, running a hand through his curls. "Only the ones who tip well," he teased. I laughed, the sound genuine and unexpected. His charm was undeniable, and for the first time in what felt like ages, I felt attractive, like perhaps this captivating young man saw more than just my years. We sipped our beers in a cozy silence, the air between us charged with a thrilling tension that promised something exciting. I wasn't about to let this moment slip away. Hunter shifted, his thigh brushing mine again, this time lingering. I turned to him, my heart pounding, and smiled. "Thank you for the ride, Hunter," I whispered, lightly resting my hand on his arm. "It's been a while since I've had company." He looked at me intently, and for a moment, time seemed to stand still. "You're welcome," he murmured, his voice soft and tentative. In that instant, I realized this was my opportunity. Hunter's gaze lingered on me, uncertain yet intrigued. My heart raced as I let my hand glide down his arm, slow and intentional. I noticed his breath catch, just slightly, but enough to signal that he felt something too. He shifted on the couch, and I leaned in closer, allowing the silk robe to slip a bit more. "You don't have to leave just yet," I whispered, my voice barely above a breath. Hunter swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing, his expression a mix of nerves and curiosity. I could see the conflict in his eyes, caught between logic and desire. And oh, how I hoped he desired me. He began to speak, but I gently placed a finger on his lips, silencing him. "Just stay a little longer," I suggested with a soft smile. When I withdrew my hand, he remained still, watching me closely. I reached over, setting his beer on the coffee table, then slid closer, my heart pounding so loudly it echoed in my ears. His scent enveloped me, fresh pine, clean laundry, and a hint of something familiar, perhaps La Nuit Delhomme. It was intoxicating. I brushed a curl from his forehead, letting my fingers linger a moment too long. His breath snagged once more, and I saw a change in his expression, something captivating sparking in his eyes. He wasn't just nervous now, he was curious, entranced, and I was done waiting. I leaned in, pressing my lips to his cheek, slow and deliberate, feeling the soft texture of his stubble. He tensed briefly, then relaxed, the tension dissolving. "You're so handsome," I murmured. It was the truth, he was like a Greek god in every meaningful way. Hunter turned slightly, and suddenly, our faces were mere inches apart. I paused for a heartbeat, granting him a chance to pull away, but he didn't. Instead, he closed the gap between us, mirroring my movement, as if something within him had finally given way. His hand settled on my back. The robe slipped open a bit more, but I didn't mind. I wanted him to see me for who I truly was. I wanted him to understand my feelings. I pulled back slightly, resting my forehead against his. "Hunter, I've waited for a moment like this for so long," I whispered, emotion thick in my voice. "I want you to know how much I care about you. I want to feel close to you." That was all the encouragement he needed. He wrapped me in a gentle embrace, lifting me off the couch. We focused solely on each other, on the connection that bound us. Hunter pulled back momentarily, his eyes searching mine, seeking confirmation that this was real. With a gentle smile, we surrendered to the moment, wholly and completely. Time seemed to fade away, the world shrinking to encompass only the two of us, enveloped in the warmth of the moment, entwined in each other. For the first time in years, I understood that this was what I had been yearning for.